Alright guys, so let's go ahead and do some test practice for our upcoming test tomorrow. So let's start factoring. So remember, we're doing all these factoring by groupings. So the first step in our process is going to be looking at A and C. So what we're going to do is we're going to have AC, so 10 times 3. So that's going to equal 30. And then what we want is the factors of 30 that are going to add up to 17. So you go through your factors, and you'll figure out that they are 2 and 15. So now what happens when we get to this step is we're going to use these factors and split up this 17, because we want two things that add to 17, so they equal 17 if we add them. So we're going to get 10, or let's start here actually. Let's start with the 2x, and then plus our 15x. Okay? So you can see that 17 is still equal to 2x plus 15x. This is equal to this. All we're doing is rewriting 17x in a different way so that we can manipulate it to solve the problem. We bring our 10x squared down and our 3 down. We still have it equal to 0. The next thing we do is factoring by grouping. We're going to create groups with the parentheses. So inside of these groups, we are then going to factor again. So we look in here, and we see that the common factor is 2x. You see that both 10 and 2 are divisible by 2, and that each one of them have an x component. So that's what we're going to pull out. When we figure out what's going on the inside, what we can do is you can divide each of these by what we're pulling out. So the 2x divided by 2x. So 10x squared divided by 2x is going to be, for the number portion, is going to leave us with a 5, and x squared over x, that's going to cancel one of the powers and the x on the bottom. I actually probably shouldn't write it like that. So that's going to take that out. So we're going to have 5x, 2x divided by 2x is 1. And we add, on this side, our common factor is a 3. So if we divide everything by 3, we're going to get 5x plus 1. Remember, you want the inside of these parentheses to be exactly equal. Okay, if they're not exactly equal, you did something wrong, so you need to go back and check that. Now what we do is we're going to look at factoring out our common factors again. So you can almost think of this as 2x, and I've done this a few times, 2x plus c, and then 3c, where this 5x plus 1 is c, and how you'd factor this out. We just pull out a c, so you get c times 2x plus 3. Okay? Just any other variable, this and this. They're common factors. So all we're going to do is I'm going to pull this 5x plus 1 out front, and I'm left with a 2x plus 3. And that's all I'm going to write, 2x plus 3. That's equal to 0. Now we solve. By solving, we're going to set both sides equal to 0. And 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. We subtract our 1. So we're left with 5x is equal to negative 1. 2x is equal to negative 3. Divide both sides by 5 and 2 respectively. And those are our answers. Next problem, let's go ahead and look over here. So, 5x squared and 11x plus 6. The first thing we're going to do, like we did with the last problem, is AC is equal to 5 times 6. We're going to get 30 again, and the factors of 30 that add up to 11 are positive 5 and positive 6. So we're going to have 5x squared plus 5x. Remember, we're splitting up our 11x and just copying everything else down. There's one other thing to note after we make our parentheses for the groups, is that in the middle of the parentheses right here, you will have a plus sign no matter what, okay? If the number or the factor is negative, you're going to put that negative inside. But that's not the case here, so we're not going to worry about that now. Now what we do is we factor. So on the left side, we could pull out a 5, and then we could also pull out an x similar to the last one. So what we're going to be left with is an x plus 1 And then on the right side, we could pull out a 6. And also we're going to left with x plus 1. So that's equal to 0. We do the same thing. We have the same thing inside our parentheses, so we could go and factor this out. And then we're left with 5x plus 6. So 5x plus 6 still equal to 0. And then all we do is we set each one of these individually equal to 0. So we're going to get x is equal to negative 1. 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. So negative 6. 5x, x is equal to negative 6 over 5. So these are our answers for this. Let's move on down. So now we're dealing with negative numbers now. Or we're going to introduce some negative numbers. So still, same thing. We're going to start with AC, which is equal to 8 times 1. So that's going to equal to 8. Our factors of 8 that equal negative 9 are negative 8 and negative 1. So when we plug stuff in, break up our 9, we're going to have negative 8x minus 1x. Bring everything else down, so x squared plus 1. That's equal to 0. And now we put in our parentheses. This is what I'm talking about, why we always have the plus in the middle. Even if our, whatever this factor is negative, we always want a plus right here. Always. No matter what. We're going to manipulate this later, so it won't be a plus, but we'll get to that, cross that bridge when we get there. So on the left side, factoring out in 8x is pretty standard stuff here. You could always, once again, you could always check to make sure you're right by redistributing these back in there. Now what's going on is on the left side, remember that when we were factoring, we always want our first term, our highest exponent, or leading coefficient to be positive. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out a negative 1, so our leading coefficient is now positive. This x value is positive. Set that equal to 0. And I did this incorrectly. Oops. There we go. So now we have two of the same things, so we could factor those out. And we're left with an 8x minus 1. So 8x minus 1, that's going to equal 0. X minus 1 is equal to 0. 8x minus 1 is equal to 0. So we get x is equal to 1. And then 8x is equal to 1. And x is equal to 1 over 8th. Or 1 over 8, excuse me. So those are the answers. And this is the last one we are going to do for... Actually, let's do this one instead. Because this is going to have some more... No, let's do this one. This is going to have some more, better work with some negatives. So, in this case, start the process the same way. We're going to do AC, which is 5 times negative 1, so negative 5. And our factors of negative 5 that add up to negative 4. It's going to be negative 5 and, and 1. Okay, so now what we do, same process as always. We split our negative 4 into negative 5x and a 1x. We bring everything else down. We draw in our parentheses and our plus sign. That's equal to 0. So that's the grouping portion. Now we factor out.
Hi, Patrick Mayer. Please report to the main office. Patrick Mayer to the main office immediately. Thank you.
So, just like we've been doing in all these other problems, we have something in the form of this where we could factor out. On the right side, I want you to kind of think about this for a minute. So we want x plus 1. We already have an x plus 1, so all we could do is just pull out a 1. I said x plus 1. I meant minus here. Excuse me. We want x minus 1, and that's what we got. So now once again, we got the same thing. We could factor that out, and we're left with a 5x plus 1. That's equal to 0. So we're going to x minus 1 is equal to 0. 5x plus 1 is equal to 0. So we have x is equal to 1. 5x is equal to negative 1. And x is equal to negative 1/2 over 5. So these are your answers. Remember, all of your answers are going to look like this. They're going to have x equals. You're not going to leave anything like this I've seen this on the homework that some of you guys turned in today, that some of you guys left it like this. This is not good enough. You need to find the x values like this. Now, these 4 problems are totally optional. I would suggest you go ahead and give them a shot tonight for a little bit of extra practice. They deal with negatives and negatives, which is something that will show up on the test. So I would suggest you go ahead and take a look at these. Try them out for yourself. And other than that, tomorrow's quiz, it's going to be only 4 questions, so don't worry about length. You're going to have plenty enough time. And then remember our standard form. So ax squared plus bx plus c, and that's equal to 0. So that's how you tell what a, b, and c are. So, other than that, I have nothing else. So have a good rest of your day.